All right, today we're going deep
Deep.
into 1960s Sicily.
Ooh.
Yeah, and we're focusing on a case file episode that tells the story of Franca Viola.
Okay.
She kind of challenged the system and started a whole movement.
Oh.
So get ready. This one's pretty intense.
Yeah, what's really interesting to me is how in this time and place, Sicily in the 60s, the cultural norms and the legal system were like
Mm.
all tied up together.
Yeah,
It made getting justice, especially for women, almost impossible.
absolutely. And we're talking about a system where things like fitina,
Right.
which was basically elopement to force a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
was used to like control and exploit women.
It's like weaponized social pressure.
Right.
A woman's virginity was tied to her family's honor.
Right.
So even a coerced elopement could force families to accept a marriage they didn't want.
Right.
The case file episode actually mentioned Serafina Loco.
Right.
She eloped with Petro Santoro,
Uh-huh.
and her father didn't approve, so it kind of forced her family's hand.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine the pressure that put on families
Right.
and the lack of choice that women had.
Yeah.
And this is where Franca Viola's story takes this crazy turn.
Yeah, Franka was only 15 from a poor family.
Right.
And she ends up, right in the middle of all this pressure.
Wow.
She caught the eye of Filippo Melodia.
Okay.
He had money, mafia ties, and a reputation for, well, getting what he wanted.
And he starts courting Franca, right?
Yeah.
But under the watchful eye of her father, Bernardo, who, I mean, he had to have seen this coming.
You think? I'm sure that didn't sit well with Melodia.
Not at all. But what really set things off was Franca rejecting Melodia.
Oh, yeah.
This wasn't just like a personal thing. It was a challenge to his control.
Yeah,
And this is where the mafia's influence becomes really clear, right?
absolutely.
It went way beyond just a, love scorn situation.
Totally. Melodia started this campaign of intimidation against Franca and her family. I mean, we're talking arson,
Yeah.
crops destroyed, even threats with guns at her father.
That's terrifying.
It was all about power and control,
Yeah.
disguised as this romantic pursuit.
Knowing the mafia's grip on Sicilian society, it's
Yeah.
scary to imagine the fear they must have felt.
Oh, for sure.
Did she try to hide, lay low to avoid more trouble?
She did, but Melodia was fueled by this obsession,
Yeah.
and he felt like he could get away with anything.
Right.
So he escalated things dramatically.
Wow.
On December 26, 1965, he kidnapped Franca from her home.
Oh my God.
Yeah, with like 12 armed men. It was terrifying.
Wow.
They even took her 8-year-old brother, Mariano, probably to put more pressure on the family.
This is where the story gets really dark.
Yeah.
The case file episode goes into detail about Franca's ordeal during her captivity.
Yeah, it's awful. For 8 days, she was held in this remote farmhouse,
Oh, God.
starved, threatened, and ultimately raped by Melodia.
God.
This was all calculated, to take advantage of this legal loophole called matrimonio reparator.
Yeah, matrimonio reparator, the rehabilitating marriage law.
Right.
It's hard to even grasp.
It basically let a rapist escape punishment by marrying his victim.
That's unbelievable.
There was this messed up system supposed to restore a family's honor,
Right.
but really it just burdened the victim,
It's awful.
forcing her to deal with the consequences of a crime committed against her.
This puts Franca's situation in a whole new light. She's
Mhm.
not just dealing with the trauma of the kidnapping and assault,
Right.
but with this immense pressure to marry her attacker.
Yeah.
It's hard to fathom the weight of that expectation.
It was unbelievable. Her family's safety, her future, everything was at stake.
Right.
And that's what makes her decision so powerful. Franca refused to marry Filippo Melodia.
Wow.
After everything she went through, she refused.
This defiance in the face of such pressure
Yeah.
speaks volumes about her courage.
That's
This determination to break free from a system that was meant to control her.
Yeah, the police, led by Commissioner Lorenzo Camilleri, had been searching tirelessly for her.
Yeah.
They finally tracked her down to Melodia's sister's house.
Okay.
It was tense, a real standoff.
I can imagine.
Melodia probably thought she'd just do what was expected.
Yeah.
He brought her out on the balcony.
Really?
As soon as the police lowered their guns, Franca took her chance.
This is the moment that makes her story so iconic.
Yeah, she looked right at Melodia and said, "I will never marry you. Goodbye."
Wow.
Can you imagine the shock?
Yeah.
The police, Melodia, and Sicilian society as a whole.
It was a complete rejection of everything expected of her.
Absolutely.
In that one sentence, she refused to be a victim,
Right.
and she exposed the absurdity of the matrimonio reparator law.
It was a turning point.
It really was.
And while we still have to explore the full impact of her defiance,
Right.
that moment signaled a potential shift in how women's rights were seen in Sicily.
Right.
The system, for maybe the first time, was challenged openly,
Right.
and that challenge would resonate far beyond that balcony.
Franca's bold declaration was just the beginning of a long and complicated journey toward justice,
Yeah.
one that would test her resolve and push the limits of Sicilian society.
It's a powerful story.
It is. Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into this incredible story of courage and resilience in the face of such overwhelming adversity.
This is going to be good.
That public rejection of Melodia had to be a huge deep.
Oh, absolutely. It was a big challenge to, like, the whole patriarchal system that had ruled women's lives for centuries.
It forced people to really see this practice for what it was, right? Not just some idea, but something that had real consequences.
Right, and the case file episode really highlights how brave Franka was.
Yeah.
I mean, standing her ground, knowing what could happen.
And with the mafia involved, too.
Exactly. It wasn't just social pressure.
Right.
There were real threats
Right.
to her family, their livelihood, everything.
So much pressure.
So much.
So what happened after she said no? Did the police arrest Melodia right then?
We did, yeah. He was
Yeah.
totally caught off guard.
Wow.
By her refusing to play along, I mean, that alone was a huge power shift.
So the tables had turned, but getting legal justice was still uncertain.
Totally. The trial was this whole spectacle.
Mhm.
Packed courtroom, everyone on edge. A lot of people still thought she should just gotten married.
It's wild how deeply ingrained those ideas were.
Yeah, changing laws doesn't mean changing minds.
Did Melodia admit to everything? The kidnapping, the assault?
Not a chance. He came up with this whole other story.
What?
Said it was a consensual elopement, that they were in love, her dad had forced them apart.
Oh, come.
Total manipulation, trying to make it seem like some Romeo and Juliet thing.
It's outrageous blaming the victim.
Classic move.
What did Franka do?
She took the stand and told her story. The whole terrifying thing.
Whoa.
Refuted all his lies, said she'd never been in love with him. The kidnapping was real. The abuse was real.
So brave of her to face him like that.
And she had to deal with pressure even during the trial.
Seriously.
People still urged her to marry him, even after everything.
That's unbelievable. This belief in matrimonio reparatura was so strong.
So strong, but Franka didn't budge.
She didn't.
She famously said, "I am not the property of anyone. Honor is lost by those who do certain things, not those who suffer them."
Wow. Those words had to hit hard.
They did. They went beyond the courtroom. They were about women's autonomy, challenging this whole system that had kept them down for generations.
Such a powerful statement. So did justice win out in the end.
It did. It was a landmark decision, made news all over Italy.
Wow.
The court believed Franka, found Melodia guilty of kidnapping and rape.
That's incredible.
He got 11 years in prison. A big deal, considering how things usually went.
A huge victory, not just for her, but for everyone who wanted a fairer system.
For sure.
But did it change things right away? Did people finally let go of these traditions?
Not overnight. Some people still held onto the old ways.
Seriously.
They thought Franka had somehow ruined her reputation, hurt her chances for a good future.
Even after everything, it's hard to believe.
It shows how deep these attitudes ran.
But her case did start something bigger, right?
Oh yeah, it was like a lightning rod.
Yeah.
Started a national conversation about women's rights, made people rethink matrimonio reparator.
So it planted the seeds for a bigger movement. What happened because of that awareness? Did other women come forward?
They did. Franka's defiance gave them courage.
Right.
Just weeks after Melodia's conviction, there was another case, Matea Travallo.
Okay.
She was kidnapped and raped by her ex-fiancé.
Oh my God.
Inspired by Franka, she refused to marry him, pressed charges.
Wow, like a domino effect.
Exactly, one brave act leading to another.
It kept going.
Yeah, Carmela Paresi, another woman, she also refused to marry her rapist.
These cases, all inspired by Franka,
All inspired by her.
it shows a growing awareness of how unjust matrimonio reparator was.
Yeah, the tide was turning.
This is a huge shift in the fight for women's rights in Italy. Franka wasn't just fighting for herself.
Right.
She started something that could change things for everyone.
Her story wasn't just about getting personal justice. It sparked a conversation that led to real change.
This is a good point to stop and think about the impact.
Yeah?
She defied her attacker, her society's expectations,
Absolutely.
and accidentally became a symbol for a movement that could transform laws and empower women.
A powerful legacy.
Powerful. And in the last part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we're going to explore the long-term effects of her story.
Right.
The end of matrimonio reparator and the fight for equality that continues today.
It's a story that's still relevant.
Stay with us as we look at the legacy of Franca Viola and the lessons her story holds for all of us. We've come a long way with Franka Viola's story.
Yeah.
From a victim of this horrible crime to a symbol of fighting back against this, like, messed up system.
It's amazing how her saying no set off all these events
Right.
and led to actual change in Italy.
We saw how other women, seeing her example,
Yeah.
started to push back against matrimonial reparator too, refusing to be silenced.
It shows how powerful individual courage can be, like a ripple effect, inspiring others to fight for justice.
But we've talked about how changing laws isn't the whole story.
Right.
Changing those deep-seated attitudes, dismantling these systems.
Yeah, that takes a lot longer.
So Franca's case was huge for legal reform.
Absolutely.
But the fight for equality in Italy and everywhere, really, that's still going on.
Oh, for sure. Getting rid of matrimonio reparator was a big win.
Yeah,
But it didn't erase all the stuff that allowed it to exist in the first place.
like peeling back layers of an onion.
Yeah, exactly.
You fix one thing, and there's a whole other problem underneath.
The fight for equality needs constant work. We have to keep challenging those beliefs and assumptions.
So what happened after Franca's trial? What were some of the big moments in getting rid of that law?
The conversations people started having, that was huge.
Yeah.
Newspapers, magazines, even TV, they were all talking about it,
Really?
challenging the old reasons for the law, showing how unfair it was.
So the media helped raise awareness.
Big time. And that led to more women sharing their own experiences,
Wow.
showing everyone that Franka's story wasn't unique.
It's incredible that they spoke out. Back then, it was so hard for victims to do that.
So brave. Their voices and the public outcry put pressure on the people in charge.
To finally do something.
And women's groups, legal experts, they also push for change.
So many people working together.
Yeah, activists, experts, everyday people, they all saw the need for change.
That's amazing. And eventually, they got a bill introduced in Parliament.
To get rid of the law for good.
That must have been a big moment.
It was, but the debate was intense. It went on forever.
Really?
The conservatives, they fought hard against it,
Of course.
saying it was about family honor, traditional values, all that.
It's weird how they used the same arguments even after Franka's case showed how wrong they were.
That's how it goes sometimes. Those old beliefs are tough to change.
But thankfully, things were different now.
Yeah, the people pushing for change, they didn't give up.
They kept fighting.
They talked about the injustice, how it hurt women, how it didn't belong in a modern world.
It was like two different ways of seeing the world clashing.
Exactly. And in the end, the push for change won.
It did.
In 1981, after years of work, Parliament repealed the matrimonio reparo law.
What a victory for Franka and everyone who fought alongside her.
It shows what people can do when they come together for justice.
But getting rid of this one law, it didn't solve everything, did it?
No, but it was a huge step, a break from a past that had hurt women for too long.
As we wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
it's important to think about what Franka Viola's story means for all of us.
Her story goes beyond Sicily. It's about fighting for human rights everywhere.
For dignity, for a life free from violence and oppression.
Exactly. It reminds us that change is possible.
Right.
Even when things seem impossible, individual courage can start a movement,
Yeah.
challenge the way things are, and create a more just world.
And maybe most importantly,
It's a call to action.
to do our part in fighting for equality.
Absolutely. Challenge those stereotypes. Make sure stories like Franka's stay in the past.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
It's a story that's heartbreaking but so inspiring.
For sure.
May Franka Viola's legacy keep pushing us all to fight for a world where everyone is valued, respected, and free.